Every great creative work stands on the shoulders of giants. Welcome to RetroInspection, where we examine and find out where the things we love today came from.
Eugenics permeated the thinking of the elite classes throughout the world, and inspired quite a bit of hate and horror during that period. Okay, so yet these writers, they thought that, and E. Doc Smith does this with the Arisians, that human beings, like cattle or domesticated animals, needed to be perfected in order to get some place, to get to the point of being worthy of something like the lens, of being worthy of protecting civilization. I really loathe the idea of eugenics. Primarily from what I think of as a scientific basis. It has nothing to do with philosophy or religion or anything of the nature. But our understanding, human understanding of our own basic natures is so limited, we cannot make decisions that would affect our progeny in the ways that eugenics wants or claims. We don't know the ramifications of genetic manipulation. Perhaps the Arisians do, perhaps the Owens do, but we don't. But I find it troubling that these writers fall back on this idea. And I find it troubling that they think that there is perhaps a floating brain out there named the mentor who can follow this red-headed super lineage in Earth's history to create the Virgil Sams, who is the penultimate or the ultimate human being and the first Lensman.
Yeah. One thing I would note is that not all of the Lensmen are actually humans in the book.
Right, but they are manipulated by the Arisians as well. They're
all just like exemplars of their species.
Right.
Yeah. Even some of the bad guys are presented as being redeemable and thus potential Lensman recruits. And in what's the next book? Is it simply, I can't remember what the name of the...
Is it the Great
Galactic?
Lensman?
Yeah, Galactic Patrol, which is the third book of the series, which posits now essentially like a Starfleet Academy for, Lensmen. And or the Lensmen and the Galactic Patrol guys are not synonymous. But yeah, no, you go back to the early 20th century, we are awash in eugenics thinking. Thus, which is why we had such things as sterilization courts in the United States of America. If you were from a family where there had been a lot of alcoholics, or you were from a family where there was, a court determined there to be an excessive amount of mental illness or feeble-mindedness, the court could just have you sterilized. You're getting a vasectomy whether you want it or not, by order of the court, so that you do not reproduce any more of these alcoholic or crazy or feeble-minded people. So, there was they definitely believed in the perfectibility of the species, and what that ultimately ends up doing is getting millions of people murdered.
Well, except you have to believe the premise that by removing genetic material from a population, that you eliminate the problem that the person elicits. And that is absurd. It's an absurd notion.
Well, they didn't really they didn't really understand this. There was
if
the
they had thought
observations.
about it,
Yeah.
if they had thought about it, they would understand that they were, because we're no smarter than they were, but they didn't think about it. It was popular. It was a popular idea. You know, Mendelian genetics gave people a sense that they could breed things out of people, but we know so much more now, but in the vast database of knowledge about, say, even genetics, we probably don't even know a tenth of what's necessary in order to eliminate disease, for instance.
Yeah.
But we're going to do it anyways because we're humans and let's go.
Well, you see with animals, with racehorses or cattle, with selective breeding can magnify desirable traits, but can also magnify undesirable traits.
Yes. And we don't, by eliminating a problem or a trait, we might be introducing an even worse trait. We just don't know. So, for me, I err on the side of the great bird of the galaxy, Gene Roddenberry, in terms of eugenics. Let's just not do it because we don't know. We're not the Arisians. Leave it alone.
Yeah. That opens up a whole can of worms about the anti-genetic manipulation policies of the Federation, which I don't know if we want to burn a lot of time on that one, but that whole thing.
Not in this episode.
No. Yeah.
So, one of the things I wanted to also touch on was this idea of uplifting, where, for instance, our relationship with a domesticated animal, with a cat, for instance, we have uplifted the natural feline into a domesticated animal. And it's a very popular trope in science fiction where a superior race manipulates another so that they end up becoming sentient. For instance, in 2001, Space Odyssey, where the monolith manipulates hominids to create human beings. This is also quite a repugnant idea to me. It gives rise to the idea that human beings are incapable of creating things like the pyramids, or they actually can't create a device to travel into space. They have to find a crashed UFO and study it instead of actually reasoning out the ways to do it. So even in that, I started off with a very bad taste in my mouth about this book.
At some point, we're going to end up having to read Eric von Daniken's books. I feel like. I think someday we keep doing this shit. We're going to paint ourselves into that corner because, though, as you just said, those have had kind of a pervasive influence in science fiction.
Like, subscribe, repost, share everywhere. To see what else we're up to, visit xynobooks.com, xenobooks.com.